What is going on, Headliner Nation? Jake and the Doc, Dr. Ethan Turner, back in the mix today because we're going to do something a little bit different. Ethan, I don't want to say free agency is over, but we've gone through a lot of the big names, some guys in some new places, some guys went back to their old teams, but today we're talking best and worst case scenarios for some of these newly signed free agents.
Yeah, we are. And, best case scenario, you like and subscribe to the channel. Worst case scenario, you still like and subscribe to the channel.
Either way, you need to like and subscribe to the channel because we're about to have a lot of fun here in the next few minutes, and we're not going to waste a whole lot of time. We're going to get into the first name, and the first one we're going to be talking about today, Ethan, is Will Fuller. So Will Fuller is now a Miami Dolphin. So why don't you go ahead, and what's the best case scenario in 2021 for Will Fuller?
Best case scenario is that Will Fuller manages to stay healthy without the assistance of PEDs this year, and that he and Devontae Parker both top 1,000 yards with the Dolphins offense thriving under a now fully healthy Tua Tagovailoa.
I mean, that sounds pretty good. That sounds like the best case scenario. Likely, though, it's going to be the worst case scenario. I mean, Will Fuller healthy without the PEDs, that's the biggest problem. We haven't seen that yet, so we haven't been proven that that's a problem. So worst case scenario for Will Fuller is that he just doesn't stay healthy. He doesn't play at least 10 games. He's under 10 games, and Tua isn't what we think he is, and he can't supply a Devontae Parker, a Will Fuller, a Mike Gesicki, and still have a run game. And Will Fuller is just one of those guys who's kind of overhyped on draft day that really just turns out to be a boom or bust option that causes more gray hair than anything else.
Yeah, Tua staying healthy plus Will Fuller staying healthy, the odds are pretty small.
I mean, that's like hitting the lotto. You know what I mean? That's like almost Powerball-esque.
It would take a lot, but it could happen.
I mean, it could.
That's the key.
It could happen. All right, next up. How about we do these two together? You want to do these two together since they're on the same team? There's a lot of tight ends floating around New England now. And I'm not talking about the type that Robert Kraft likes. I'm talking about tight ends on the football field. I'm talking Hunter Henry and Juju Smith, the two high-profile tight ends, both going to New England. What's the best case scenario here?
Best case scenario is that we see Bill Belichick revert back to his 2011 offense, which saw both Aaron Hernandez and Gronk out of the tight end position, secure over 110 targets, and produce 2 top 5 tight end options for fantasy. Could it happen? There's one part of the solution that's not really there anymore. I mean, it's not Tom Brady throwing the footballs, but
that matters. Who
else is going to catch the football there? I don't think they even have a single wide receiver that I like for fantasy. So
they have I think their motto is that if we get enough wide receiver 3s and 4s, they'll combine into a super wide receiver. But it doesn't work that way.
It's the least sexy wide receiver core in the entire league.
For being as new as it is, yes. It's like they constructed, this is what they wanted, and it's still not sexy. Worst case scenario is Robert Kraft gets his financial statements at the end of the month. He realizes it's not the tight ends that he was hoping for and totally makes life miserable for both of these guys. Because here's the deal, and you kind of just mentioned it. They brought in a bunch of wide receivers, right? We got the Kendrick Bournes and the Nelson Aguilar. Julian Edelman's 64 years old at this point. The biggest issue is Cam Newton. Can Cam Newton throw the ball efficiently, consistently? Can he just make it past 10 yards? That's my biggest issue. And one of the things that we've liked to see from both these tight ends in the past is that touchdown upside. We struggle getting New England into the red zone to get those touchdown opportunities. So worst case scenario is we just lost 2 tight end ones in the same fantasy football year. I mean, these are 2 guys that can finish top 12 almost on any other team, but because they're together, worst case scenario is neither one of them finish inside the top 12. That's sad. That hurts me.
That means we only have 4 tight end ones in the whole league.
Yeah, we may push 6 if we're feeling frisky, but that's about it. After 6 is just pure crapshoot. It's like a roll of the dice. It could be anybody's ball game.
Total luck.
Exactly, yeah. Good luck with it. What about Corey Davis? Now, Corey Davis sucked, and then he was good, and now he's at Jet. So there's that's going on. At least he's not an Adam Gase jet, so that's a good thing. No Adam Gase has to be a benefit, right? But what's best case scenario for Corey Davis?
I think best case scenario for him is the Jets actually draft an NFL quarterback at number 2 and completely avoid the wide receiver position, allowing Davis the opportunity to be what some had expected Denzel Mims to be last season, just an absolute target hogging X receiver. He's got 150 targets. Just pencil him in for 150 targets. He catches like 90 of them for 1,400 yards and 3 touchdowns because the Jets are still terrible.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds good. 1,400 yards. I'm thinking more along the lines of the worst case scenario, though. If Corey Davis was only a thing because A.J. Brown was really good at football, and it forced a lot of defensive attention towards A.J. Brown, leaving Corey Davis with a lot of single coverage. Well, you mentioned Denzel Mims. They got Jamison Crowder, and that's about it. I mean, defenses are going to be able to take away Corey Davis. He's now going to have to probably deal with the team's opposite number 1 defensive back, and Corey Davis going in as a wide receiver 1 on his own team isn't even going to crack the top 30 overall for fantasy football.
But there's a chance. What if they end up with Justin Fields, Zach Wilson?
It's the
One
Jets.
Of these guys could be like an absolute transcendent quarterback prospect. I mean, there's a chance that Justin Fields can completely avoid this offensive line and just give Corey Davis, like, I don't know, 10 targets a game. Like, we'll take that. We'll take that.
I mean, I would take it, but I don't know if I'd be happy with it. Because what if those targets are less like garbage? Like, what if they're all like 4-yard slants? What if they're all quick slants and the dude ends up with 10 receptions for 40 yards?
Well, then in PPR leagues, your league mates are complaining about the fact that they're in a PPR league.
So you've basically just written off 2/3 of the fantasy community because if they don't play full PPR, you're like, I don't care about your fantasy production.
I'm just saying, like, 10 catches is great in PPR, even if it is only for 40 yards.
Whatever. You just totally written off a lot of people. Anyway, next up, Juju. Now, Juju stayed home. Juju,
yeah,
we thought Juju was going to go somewhere else. Juju probably should have gone somewhere else. But Juju stayed in Pittsburgh. And now he's got to deal with, a lot of other people. He's got to deal with Deontay Johnson and James Washington. It's not just the Juju Smith-Schuster show. What do you got for Juju best case scenario?
Best case scenario, Big Ben, he's got 1 year left in the tank, baby. And as a Steelers fan, I can assure you that he understands the value that Juju provides on a 1-year deal. 150 targets to Juju. I don't care. Deontay Johnson can't catch the football. Big Ben knows it. Everybody knows it. Juju, he will catch these footballs. 150 targets, 10 touchdowns. We're returning to peak Juju, baby. We're back.
So you think
and
he's
the Steelers
going
win the Super Bowl?
Wow, here
Best
we go.
Best case scenario.
Not being a homer at all here. So you think 150 targets for Juju?
He had 166 once in his career, so I don't think 150 is out of the
Listen,
question.
this one time at band camp, never mind. Anyway, I don't see 150 targets. I mean, worst case scenario for Juju Smith-Schuster is basically almost what we saw last year, right? Is Deontay Johnson continues to go out there and get 10 plus targets a game. Heck, there's times where he's getting 15 plus targets a game, and we haven't even had to really worry about James Washington, and I haven't mentioned Chase Claypool yet. Chase Claypool made himself an appearance on TMZ on the news. He's not exactly in big trouble. I think it was blown out of proportion a little bit, but still some negative spotlight. I'm sure that's fine by the time the season comes around, but there's a lot of mouths to feed, and we're still waiting for that elbow ligament to just snap in Ben. It's just, I don't trust it. Worst case scenario, Big Ben gets hurt, and he's got to deal with a garbage can at quarterback because there's no other option in Pittsburgh. There's not. You can't argue it.
Yeah. Dwayne Haskins.
Okay. Anyway,
it gets really ugly in Pittsburgh.
It's bad. It's bad. After Ben leaves, it's all downhill from there.
It's real ugly.
Phillip Lindsay. Now, Phillip Lindsay is a running back who I enjoy watching. I enjoy the story of Phillip Lindsay. Dude decided to go to a team that has 64 running backs on his depth chart right now. How could there possibly be a best case scenario for Phillip Lindsay?
Well, best case scenario is that the 2 oldest running backs and probably the 2 guys ahead of him in the pecking order, Mark Ingram, David Johnson, those guys are totally washed. They're not good. They can't stay healthy. They're not effective. They look like old men. And because of that, Phillip Lindsay becomes the de facto bell cow in the backfield. He has solid RB2 production all season long because Mark Ingram ain't going to get it done. David Johnson, it's over, man. I'm sorry. If you're a Mark Ingram guy, you're a David Johnson guy, like, it's over. I'm sorry. Phillip
Now,
Lindsay has another year. He's young enough. He has another year, and he gets it done.
I like Phillip Lindsay. I'm going to preface my statement with that. I'm a fan of Phillip Lindsay. I was hoping he could go somewhere else and really get that bell cow work from week one. Worst case scenario is, though, he plays for the Texans, and the Texans are a complete dumpster fire right now. Is Deshaun Watson going to be there? You mentioned the depth chart with Mark Ingram, who I agree, nothing really left in the tank there. David Johnson, he's got something in the tank, but he's only got it for like 7 to 9 games a year. Phillip Lindsay, I think, is going to be one of those guys who is going to have a couple big games this year, but it's only going to be a couple. It's not going to be worth it. So worst case scenario is he's just buried on a horrible team that's constantly losing and doesn't give him the opportunity to run, and he's really not known for his pass catching ability anyway. What about Marvin Jones Jr.? Now, Marvin Jones, no longer in Detroit, thank God for him. He's now in Jacksonville, not much better, but at least it sounds like he's probably going to have Trevor Lawrence throwing to him. Plus, they have DJ Chark on the opposite side. What's best case scenario for Marvin Jones Jr.?
Okay, hear me out.
Okay, give it to me.
Trevor Lawrence shows
Right.
up. He's going to be the pick. Let's just
Right.
assume that. Trevor Lawrence shows up. First day, he's a stud. Trevor Lawrence knows he's number one overall pick. He knows he's good, but he needs that guy. He needs his dude that he can trust. He needs his binky. And guess who's there for him? Marvin Jones, the dude who's been through it all, who has already been a player's binky before. He takes Trevor Lawrence under his wing and he says, I'm the only guy here you can trust in the red zone. Nobody else is going to catch touchdowns for you. And that leads to the greatest touchdown wide receiver quarterback combo
ever.
For Trevor Lawrence's first year in the NFL.
Okay.
And Marvin Jones catches 15 touchdowns for the Jags next season, almost 100% of the team's total touchdowns.
Well, that is a way best case scenario. Worst case scenario, more likely scenario, is he becomes highly touchdown dependent, which is great, but he still plays on the Jacksonville Jaguars, who struggle scoring touchdowns, which is the biggest problem. I think a young quarterback coming in, he's gonna want to be on that highlight reel, right? He's gonna want to be on SportsCenter. He's gonna want to be the top play. Who's the big playmaker in that offense? You can say it's Marvin Jones, but the past couple years it's been DJ Chark. And in my opinion, DJ Chark is the guy who takes away those touchdowns, leaving Marvin Jones with nothing but the scraps, and he turns into like D.D. Westbrook or Keelan Cole. That's sad. That's pretty bad. On the inside, I feel
That's true though.
It is, but I don't want to believe it because on the to be completely honest here, breaking character for a second, I really want Marvin Jones to succeed there.
I think that Marvin Jones has a chance to
catch
10 touchdowns. He's done it multiple times before. He can catch touchdowns. Like that's what he does. No, somebody's got to catch these passes from Trevor Lawrence. Like
they're going to be losing.
Marvin Jones, like
they're going to be losing ball games. It's gonna, and I agree, but I have to stick to my worst case scenario. Ego here, so that's okay. But I want to make sure I told everybody that Jared Cook.
He's going for 15 touchdowns.
I don't think he's going for 15. That's like some next level.
Mark it up in pen.
Okay. 15. Somebody write that down and remind us about it in December. Jared Cook is next. Jared Cook is washed. What's the possible best case scenario for Jared Cook?
Best case scenario, Jared Cook is not washed, and Justin Herbert is absolutely the real deal. He throws for 40 touchdowns as a sophomore, and 10 of them go to Cook. Once again, Cook, the tight end position is barren. So if you can catch 10 touchdowns, tight end one, just book that in. And I think Justin Herbert can throw for 40 touchdowns. So why not? Why not Jared Cook?
I mean, I get the fact. I will agree on the Herbert talk. I'm a big Justin or Herbert if you're feeling sexy at the
Herbert.
time. I mean, it just depends how you're feeling right then and there. But Jared Cook has just slowly been on a decline for the past 3 years. So, worst case scenario is everybody sees the vacated tight end position in LA from Hunter Henry leaving, and they assume production of Jared Cook, and he totally lays an egg, and we see the likes of more Donald Parham. You know what I mean? It just
Who's like
gets
9 feet tall.
yeah, exactly. Dude just has to like put his hand in the air, and he's like an instant red zone threat from the 30. You know what I mean? He's a big dude. And in my case, in my scenario, worst case scenario, Jared Cook stays as the number 2 tight end in this offense, barely sees the field, and only ends the year with like 250 yards and 3 touchdowns.
Well, that is depressing.
Okay, let's move on to what about Kenny Golladay? That's a big name. Kenny G is now a member of the Giants in New York. What's the best case scenario?
Best case scenario, Daniel Jones returns to Danny Dimes. And Kenny Golladay is that kid walking down the street, picking up every single dime that he sees. And he's collecting all the dimes because nobody else is there. Saquon Barkley, he's coming off an ACL. He might not be 100%. They're going to be behind in games because the team's not very good. So Danny's going to be slinging it. And Kenny G is going to be ringing it.
Wow, it's like you almost planned that. Almost that was almost impressive. However, worst case scenario is he's sharing targets with Sterling Shepard, Darius Slayton, Evan Ingram, now Kyle Rudolph, Saquon Barkley in the backfield, and can your Danny Dimes, your dude just dropping dimes everywhere, can he drop enough dimes to the point that Kenny Golladay can make $1? Because if we can't get to 100 yards, I don't care about it. So we need 10 dimes for 10 yards apiece to make it happen. Do some quick math. I mean, it's going to be tough. So worst case scenario is the Giants are a better football team overall, but fantasy football wise, Kenny G is nothing more than a low end wide receiver 2 with wide receiver 1 upside in good matchups.
This game isn't as fun as I was hoping it would be.
Anyway,
that's why I took the best case, because all yours are sad. Let's talk about Curtis Samuel, because I love Curtis Samuel.
I do too. This was a hard one for me.
I'm a believer in Curtis Samuel.
I
was a believer last year, but here's the thing. Curtis Samuel, when he came into the league, nobody knew what he was. Was he a running back? Is he a wide receiver? He didn't really have a role, and those types of guys tend to get lost. Well, now it's pretty clear he's a wide receiver, and he's got Fitzmagic throwing him targets, and he's going to be basically dominating the slot for the Washington football team. I think he becomes a yard after the catch monster, and he was born to be that, baby. He's got wheels. He's ready to roll. He's going to take it to the house, and it's just going to keep growing and growing, and we're going to be going, holy cow, Curtis Samuel is like basically what we thought DJ Moore was going to be last year.
Yeah. Plus, he's got the connection with Ron Rivera. I mean, that he's a Rivera guy. So, I mean,
he's the guy. He knows.
This is hard for me, but because I love me some Curtis Samuel this year. I love Curtis Samuel a lot. Worst case scenario, Fitzmagic throws too many interceptions. They end up pulling him. We deal with a quarterback carousel in Washington all year long, dominated by Terry McLaurin, just because that's just going to be everybody's favorite. And Curtis Samuel is going to become a guy that kind of gets lost in the mix because a lot of that short check down passing game goes to J.D. McKissick instead.
Ew.
That sounds disgusting. I don't even want to say that out loud, but I mean, that could be gross.
I'm disgusted that you even had to bring it up in the video.
I am too. Speaking of disgusting, how about the Detroit Lions? They have gone out and said, we don't want DeAndre Swift to be a 3-down back. We're signing Jamaal Williams. What is the best possible case for Jamaal Williams?
Jamaal Williams does everything that DeAndre Swift does, slightly less good. And because of that, it's going to take a DeAndre Swift injury, which, if you bought my rookie guide last year, is not that foreign of a possibility. He missed 3 games this year. He had a high injury risk coming into the league. So DeAndre Swift goes down. Jamaal Williams becomes the cheapest 3-down running back in the league, and he wins you a fantasy championship in like the last 6 weeks because nobody else is there and the team is just terrible.
I mean, I don't hate that thought process. Worst case scenario has basically already come true. He's a part of the Detroit Lions. I mean, he's already fulfilled worst case scenario. And so now he's got to chew on kneecaps. He's got to worry about Jared Goff as his quarterback. What weapons are on the outside to pull defenders outside of the box, even if he does get that opportunity? Jamaal Williams is nothing more than a handcuff at best. Like you said, DeAndre Swift is the more elite talent, and Jamaal Williams actually reverts back to his Green Bay days and just sees minimal touches, and he's going to just kind of be a nuisance. Nobody that, in my opinion, worst case scenario is even worth owning.
I would say that's probably the most likely case scenario too, but this one was the hardest one for me.
Dude's in Detroit, dude, and he's got nothing.
It's not going to get better.
I mean, Jared Goff's on the bench. Like, he's just snacking on a box of Crayolas. I mean, there's just not a whole lot going on.
They're biting kneecaps because they're behind by 30 and still winning the ball. It's going to be rough.
It's rough. All right, what about A.J. Green, though? Because this one I kind of like because it's about my home team, Cardinals. We can talk about my home team for a second here. A.J. Green, best case scenario going to Arizona.
Best case scenario for A.J. Green, for your Cardinals, for really anyone who still wants to think that A.J. Green is an elite wide receiver in the league, is that he actually plays the entire season and is healthy the whole year. He's a solid wide receiver, too, on his own team. Barely. Christian Kirk and him are like right there next to each other. A.J. Green just edges him out by 50 yards or whatever.
Worst case scenario is, and I hate to even say this because this is not the real me saying this. They bring back Larry Fitzgerald, and Larry Fitzgerald eats into whatever volume that AJ Green was going to get, and AJ Green is just nothing more than a depth add to this team because they still have a lot of young talent with the likes of Andy Isabella. You mentioned Christian Kirk. Christian Kirk had a great chemistry with Kyler Murray. He just has to stay healthy, and if he does, we don't see AJ Green as much as maybe I want to see him. My inner fan, though, says that AJ Green isn't done yet.
I have a hypothesis.
Bring it on.
What if AJ Green is just a stopgap for the first half of the year so that when AJ Green goes down, Larry Fitzgerald can come in and only play half a season? I think if you have both of them, you could probably get like 13, 14, 15 games out of them combined. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's the strategy, is that AJ Green comes in, is the third wide receiver, just kind of does. Larry Fitzgerald comes in after him, sucks his life force out, and plays for another 5 years.
Can I do a best case scenario?
Yes.
Best case scenario, this was 5 years ago, and the Cardinals have AJ Green, DeAndre Hopkins, and Larry Fitzgerald.
And
greatest wide receiving trio ever in 2016.
Carson Palmer.
Whatever.
I think that would actually be not that bad, but
I mean, I would take it. I would. That may be one of the greatest ever assembled. They're just not all of them. Hopkins isn't, but the other two, they're just at the end of their career. What about Gerald Everett? Once buried behind Tyler Higbee in LA, does he become a binky in Seattle for Mr. Russell Wilson?
Don't steal my words, Jake.
Sorry, I like the word binky.
Best case scenario.
Can't help it.
Russ is cooking. Gerald Everett is holding Russ's binky because Russ is cooking, and he's going to need a binky when he's cooking because Gerald Everett, I think, personally, has the best argument to become the next Logan Thomas, comes out of basically nowhere, and is the great, cheap breakout tight end of this season. We've already went through the Will Disley experiment. Bless his heart. 2 major injuries in 2 years. He's done. Russ likes the tight end position.
He likes tight ends.
They're going to throw for 30 touchdowns. Why can't Gerald Everett be a part of that? I think he fits in well with the scheme, and I'm just saying,
no Hollister, no Olsen. It's got to be Everett.
Action,
I mean,
I'm just saying, if you need a binky, Gerald Everett's a good guy to hold your binky.
Yep, I agree. So if this one's tough for me, but for worst case scenario, Gerald Everett. Pete Carroll wasn't joking around. All they want to do is run the football. They don't let Russ throw it anymore. Russ only throws for 21 touchdowns, majority of which go to Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf. And Gerald Everett is a overhyped tight end that has top 10 potential, but finishes outside the top 20.
Yeah, if anyone's still watching this, they're not watching after that. Blasphemy.
I love Gerald Everett, though. You know what? It's not a bold prediction at all because it's March, April, whenever this comes out.
We love bold prediction. Hit me, Jake.
Yeah. I would not be surprised if Gerald Everett finishes fringe top 5 tight ends this year.
We need Kyle in here to give his like whisperer magic.
Well, me and Kyle just recorded tight end rankings, and he has Gerald Everett fairly high. Not that high, but he has him higher than I did. I mean, he has him higher than me, but I'm considering the move.
More of the story, go get you some Gerald Everett.
Absolutely. Last guy we're talking about, and he just signed with his old team once again. It's T.Y. Hilton going back to the Indianapolis Colts. What's the best possible case scenario now with Carson Wentz at quarterback?
Yeah, best case scenario here is that despite being the least healthy wide receiver on the team, T.Y. Hilton manages to be the most healthy wide receiver on the team. And I guess he becomes like Carson Wentz's Deshaun Jackson. Like they become a thing again. Wentz did have some pretty good chemistry with Jackson. T.Y. Hilton's small and can run fast. Like
he's small and he can run. Like they look similar, I guess. I don't know.
I mean, I'm just saying, like, I think it could work pretty well. I mean, 1,000-yard season, wide receiver 3, 5 touchdowns.
I mean, I don't hate that. Worst case scenario.
Good though.
Worst case scenario though is Paris Campbell actually makes it onto a football field, and he's good because we've all thought he's been. I don't know if you thought he's been good. I like Paris Campbell. I think he is a good wide receiver. When he's on the field, he's just never there. And Michael Pittman Jr. emerges in this offense as that big-bodied target for Carson Wentz in the red zone. And T.Y. Hilton just becomes so reliant on those big plays that it's kind of like Deshaun Jackson. He's great for 1 week, and he's just gone the rest.
This was easily the saddest show that we.
I feel like the most negative person. I should have chose best case scenarios because I feel like I was a total jerk today.
You were very mean.
I was
anyone who likes these players is like, gosh,
I know.
I don't know if
sorry.
my arguments were good enough as the best case, but I can tell you that your arguments for worst case made me very sad.
It made me want. There are certain times where I was like, man, I'm being pretty harsh right now. But listen, these types of things are fun to do in the offseason because there are tons of storylines, right? There's tons of guys that we can talk about here that make a lot of sense. One guy we didn't even talk about. I skipped over one. Why not? Let's just throw him in here at the end because I don't want to forget about it. Kenyan Drake. Kenyan Drake was on the list. I skipped over his name. I noticed it as we were wrapping up. So let's talk about Kenyan Drake real quick. Hit me with a best case scenario for Kenyan Drake.
Best case scenario, Kenyan Drake. John Gruden goes back in a time machine to the 1990s.
Wow.
He's feeling it.
Is it DeLorean?
I don't know. Possibly.
Okay. Possibly. Bill and Ted style.
You know what? Forget all these fancy quarterback throwing the ball 50 times a game. We're not doing any of that. We're going to run the football. Okay? So we're running the football and we're going to run it like 600 times. Okay? Because we got the 2 best running backs in the league. All right? We got the man, Josh Jacobs. He's going to be the thunder. And then we got the dude, Kenyan Drake. He's the lightning. And we're going to run the football down your throat.
I mean, that was high. I'm glad I went back to Kenyan Drake and gave you the opportunity to put this on video because now this is a part of your life forever.
I'm excited. I can't wait for someone to bring it up to me in my normal life.
Anyway, worst case scenario is Kenyan Drake is no better and no more involved than Jalen Richard. He's just a cheap insurance policy for Josh Jacobs and is really just not utilized in this offense whatsoever.
Well, they did pay him like $14 million, so he's not that cheap.
I mean, well, right. But for them, the way they spend money on pointless things, cheap.
Terrible things.
Yeah, terrible things.
Raiders are so bad.
They needed... Dude, I wanted Kenny Galladay in Las Vegas. I did.
Yeah, but that would just
didn't
ruin your Bryan Edwards lovers.
That's right. Well, no, I mean, it could help the Bryan Edwards lovers because now he's not the guy anymore and he can be...
He was never going to be the guy.
He was never going to be the guy.
We're doing best case, worst case for Bryan Edwards right here.
He wasn't even on our list. But listen, these types of things are fun. This is what the offseason is all about, is coming up with different ideas and having fun with it and discussing things because every one of these signings we just talked about, everybody has a different opinion because it's March, right? They all think that they can see the future and they know what it's going to turn out to be. But here's where it's a little bit more fun. Now you have the opportunity down below in the comment section. Just go down to your keyboard, click the button on your phone, whatever you gotta do, leave a comment down below. What are some of your best and worst case scenarios for a few of the names that we listed here in today's show? That's going to be really fun to go through the comment section and read through everybody else's best case and worst case scenarios. We're going to start coming here with some different types of shows to have more fun, to lighten up the community, to get you guys more involved. So hopefully you like that. If you do, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. We'll be doing it all year long. And to be honest, I just spent a buttload of money on some autographed memorabilia that I'm going to be giving away here pretty soon. So you may want to stick around for that. So hopefully you guys have a great rest of your week. For myself, for the doc, we'll talk to you guys later.